So welcome along to A Story to Tell with me, Richard Beauvoisin. This is mainly taken from my Radio Bath show every Thursday morning from 10 until 12. If you do like it, don't forget to subscribe, share it to others, and let everyone know all about Radio Bath. Hope you enjoy it.
I just want you to know who I am. I just want you.
Love that track. There's Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls.
I just want you.
Love dancing to that song, although I really struggle. It's 3/4 timing. Most of my dancing that I do is 4/4 time. For those that aren't aware, I'm a dance teacher normally, as well as being here on Radio Bath. But yeah, love that track. Just can't dance to it, which is really annoying. But there we go. Anyway, on my show today, A Story to Tell is Cornelia Raubal. I've got to make sure I don't say it in a weird way every single time. Seems to be the thing I do at the moment. She's a really fascinating guest, from the Soviet Union to being in a boardroom to being quite often the only female in the boardroom as well. We're going to be talking all about that and leadership as well, right between now and 12 o'clock. If you do have any questions for Cornelia, then you can text Bath followed by your message to 80011, or you can email studio@radiobath.com.
This is Radio Bath.
It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today on A Story to Tell. My guest today is Cornelia Raubal. Good morning, Cornelia.
Good morning, Richard.
There you go. You came loud and clear. I always have that moment on Zoom. You're here via Zoom. When I open up the airwaves and I go, please come out loud. Please come out loud. It comes from my very first show, actually, when I interviewed somebody via Zoom. And I couldn't work. I didn't know the desk as well then. So I had no idea if they were going to come out live until I went live. And that was quite a nerve-wracking moment for me. But there we go. Better now. Now, how have you come to be on this show today? Who do we know as a joint person?
I think you're talking about my husband, Johan.
Might well be. So remind everybody who Johan is, first of all.
So Johan is an author, and he has just completed his second book, his second novel. So that will be released in October this year.
Fabulous. And if anybody missed that interview, then you can catch it up on the podcast. Just type in A Story to Tell to any podcast provider. But we're here about you today, because Johan said at the end, he said, the person you want, it's been lovely chatting to you, Richard, but the person you want to speak to is my wife. I went, okay, let's get her on. So here you are. So I've done a little Desert Island Discs intro for you. Are you ready for this?
Okay, ready for it.
Now, I'll be honest with you, because I love AI to a large degree. I've let AI help me write this. I have checked it, but I need to know, because there was once I interviewed somebody and I wrote something out and they said, I've never met that person. I don't know where you got that from. So let's see how accurate this is. So my guest today on A Story to Tell is Cornelia Raubal, leadership coach, advisor and former CEO, whose life has taken her from childhood visits to the Soviet Union and living in Siberia to the steel industry, boardrooms, oligarchs, and often being the only woman in the room. Along the way, she has faced adversity, discovered the power of choice, built a business helping women step into leadership with confidence, and found strength through family, values, volunteering and ice hockey. Today, Cornelia shares a story with 6 songs that marks key moments in her life. How accurate was that?
That was accurate. Very good.
Go. Not bad at all. I have done some research.
It's fairly easy with me as well, so...
It is. Do you know what? We were talking off air a minute ago about the fact that I know a Cornelius and you are Cornelia, and I'll be honest with you, I said I couldn't find too much about you, and I think I'd written in Cornelius, and that's why there's not many Cornelius Raubals.
Well, that makes sense, because I would expect anything that you found online for Cornelia Raubal to lead to me, because there's only one of me in the entire world, so everything points to me.
Everything is you. So does that mean that you have a Gmail account that's cornelia.raubal@gmail.com?
No, that was in the time where I just used my surname, so I was hiding a little bit.
You were hiding. Fair enough. We're going to come back to that very shortly. Now, we're going to go through your whole story today, lots of different bits and pieces, which I'm really looking forward to. We're going to start off quite at the beginning, kind of back in your childhood life, to kind of find out how you got to where you are today. Now, you had a very unusual childhood, didn't you?
I did. Well, not unusual in many ways. I was an only child, and I was a latchkey kid, and I better explain that for your listeners that perhaps don't understand that. It just meant that I would come home to an empty home, I would open the letterbox, put my finger through the letterbox, pull the string with the door key on, and let myself into the house, and then I'd be at home alone for an hour or two until my parents came home from work. So all of that was quite normal, if you like. What was unusual was the fact that I started learning Russian at age 13.
Okay,
and that's the bit that's actually pushed my life forward into places I never expected to go.
So what made you choose Russian at the age of 13 then? Because it's an unusual choice.
It is an unusual choice, and I'm going to have to admit something now.
Go on.
It was actually not totally my choice, because my first language at school was actually German. However, I didn't choose that either. I chose French, and then the school phoned to my mother and said, do you mind if your daughter does German instead, because we're oversubscribed for French? And my mother said, that's fine. And I was really angry with her, in actual fact. But then German turned out to be so good, and I really enjoyed it. So when it came to choosing a second language, because I had a gift for languages, I said I didn't mind whether I did French or Russian. And so, of course, same situation applied. There were more people wanting to do French than Russian, so I did Russian, and I absolutely loved it.
Now, languages for me are probably the opposite, so I'm much more mathematically minded. We were talking off air about how long it would take me until I mentioned my book. I reckon this is pretty good record for me today. There's even a chapter in my book about the fact that I'm dreadful at languages. I cannot get my head around the thought process of thinking in a different language and saying in a different language. I'd always translate, and I know that's the early part of when you speak a language, you translate it in your head and all of that. I just couldn't get my brain around it at all, so I basically decided to stop learning them, because my process was that most people speak English anyway, to a large degree, and that is incredibly lazy. I'm aware of that, but you know what? It's never held me back. But it meant that I didn't go to Russia.
Yes.
Whereas you did.
I did, yes. Well, I actually went first of all to the Soviet Union. So at the end, or towards the end of my first year of learning Russian, there was an opportunity to go with the school to the Soviet Union. And so, of course, I wanted to do that. And somehow my parents found the money, and I went off to the Soviet Union, and I visited Moscow and Leningrad, as it was at that time.
So what era are we talking about here?
This was 1980s, so early 1980s, 1983.
So we've got the Cold War full in operation right now.
Absolutely.
The Berlin Wall obviously is still up, because that was 89.
Yes.
So how did your school... I'm guessing it can't have been a comprehensive school, would be my guess.
You're correct. It was a grammar school.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. We're looking at schools at the moment. I'm just trying to imagine any of the local schools around here taking people off to Russia. It's not that necessarily likely. So how has it kind of come about then that you can take people to Russia, or Soviet Union as it was back then, even though the war was up and the Cold War was going on?
It was incredibly controlled. So you had to go through one travel agency. When you were there, you had a guide who would make sure that you stayed in all the correct areas, that you would see what they wanted you to see, and it was very controlled. So
I remember going to... So everybody says whenever you go to somewhere that's quite extreme, you feel different and you feel the culture. So my memory when I very first went to Sri Lanka, and I was about 23, I think it was, my lasting memory was that there was a crocodile crossing the road and nobody blinked an eye. And I still go back to that and think, surely that's not normal. But for them, it was quite normal. So what was the striking thing for you, going to the Soviet Union, going to Moscow back in 1983, that was so different to the UK?
So I have to give you... So my parents actually met travelling the world. They both worked on board ship. And so one of the things that my mother always said to me was the fact that what the media broadcasts about different people, nationalities, races, whatever, is not always the true picture. So I had that in mind when I was going, and I realised just how friendly the Russians actually were once you got to know them. So yes, that look on the street is very closed, cold, a little bit, very unfriendly, it seems. But once you actually take the time to get to know them, to speak with them, they are incredibly friendly. There weren't any things... I think the queues were probably the strangest bit for me as a British schoolgirl, because people would join queues not even knowing what was for sale.
What the queue was for.
They would just stand there, and then they would ask, why are we queuing? Which always fascinated me, because I just couldn't imagine. I mean, the Brits are known for actually queuing. However, the Russians took it to a whole new level, because they queued for everything, and they were quite happy to do so, because the expectation was that they were going to get something good from having to stand in a queue. I'm
just trying to picture that. I'm walking down to my destination, I see a queue, and I go, do you know what? I think I'll join that. Wonder what I'm doing here. That's a fascinating thing, isn't it? And it's so that was Moscow, and then Leningrad as well. What was that like?
I loved Leningrad. I have to admit that I think Moscow is quite grey. The whole of it just felt grey, and I think perhaps because the whole trip was quite regulated around seeing what they wanted you to see. So we visited Red Square, we visited Lenin's mausoleum at the time, and Leningrad was much more European in a way. The buildings were absolutely fabulous. The architecture was amazing, and then visiting places like the Hermitage, that is the Winter Palace, and seeing these malachite columns. That's the thing that stuck with me the most, because this deep green malachite, I'd never seen that anywhere else, and that was just fabulous.
Remind everybody what a malachite is, just for those that are going, what's a malachite?
It's a green stone, but it's a very deep green stone, and they had whole columns of this, so it was very it was beautiful.
Fabulous. And then Siberia came around.
Well, this was much later. So I actually went back to Moscow and Leningrad with the school again, and this was it was actually my final year at school, because I was still doing Russian, and that was already a little bit more relaxed, shall we say, because the guide that we had just looked at us and said, right, you can go off wherever you want, go and explore. You can all speak Russian well enough. Go and do what you want to do. So that's again a different sort of different trip for me. And Siberia came about because I chose to do Russian at university. So that was my year abroad.
Okay.
And I lived in a closed city. Now, a closed city, it meant that they hadn't seen foreigners for over 70 years, that movement into and out of the city, even for Russians, was restricted. The population was held at just around the 1 million inhabitant mark. And for the first 4 months that I was there, it was still a closed city. And part of our going there was to celebrate the fact that it was going to be opening up, because we were going in the period. So this was 1991. So we were in Glasnost and Perestroika.
Do you know what? There's so much we're going to delve into. We're scratching the surface, but it is time for your first track, which you've chose Everywhere by Fleetwood Mac. Why this one?
Yes. It's actually the very first record I ever bought, and yes, it is that long ago that it was a record. So there's lots of memories around that, and it was probably the first time where I really got into music, because my parents were never that much into music. So this was my sort of first exploration into the world of music and what I liked and what I didn't like, and Everywhere I absolutely love, because it fits with my whole sort of thoughts on music.
Brilliant. We're going to be back with Cornelia very, very shortly. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today. My guest today is Cornelia Raubal. She is a leader. She was living in Russia, or I should say Siberia, and many, many other things we're going to chat about as well. We left your story, Cornelia, kind of living in a closed city. Now, just for those that weren't listening beforehand, just remind everybody what a closed city is in Siberia in 1991.
So a closed city meant that they hadn't seen foreigners for more than 70 years at that point, and that movement into and out of the city was restricted even for Russian citizens themselves.
So I know my lovely wife, she spent her year in Japan, so she studied Japanese. And she said that when she was walking around, because she's blonde-haired and blue-eyed, that quite often when she was in the rural parts of Japan, they were literally looking at her like she was an alien. So you going into Siberia as a foreigner that they hadn't seen for 70 years, what was that experience like?
That's quite interesting, because then that brings me on to something that... so my husband calls me a cultural chameleon. So it doesn't matter which country I'm in, I look like I belong. People do not know that I'm from another country. So I always get people coming up to me in the streets, chatting with me and asking me for directions and all of that sort of thing. And even in the middle of Siberia, wearing what I thought were very obvious Western clothes. I mean, I was wearing ski clothes because in the winter it gets to -40. So I thought I stuck out like a sore thumb, but apparently I didn't. But of course there was a lot of interest, so I appeared on the radio. This is much easier, I have to admit. Trying to get questions from a phone in Russian, and trying to sort of create your answer from that was much more difficult than this is. So, thank you for that.
That's okay. Anytime. My Russian is limited at best. When I say limited, kind of non-existent. Just very quickly, sidetracking, again, going back to my lovely wife, who I seem to have mentioned a number of times already on this show, is that because she speaks Japanese, quite often people will say, well, speak Japanese then. And she then feels like a performing monkey, so often she doesn't do it. So I'm not going to ask you to speak Russian in any way, shape or form. But do you kind of get that experience when people say, oh, you speak Russian then? Go on then.
Yes, absolutely. People always want to hear you speak in the language. And it's always difficult because it's like, what do I say?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the... I mean, it doesn't matter what I say. I know that, but it's just like, oh, well, what do you want me to say?
It's always... I remember being in France and not speaking French to the French people that were there and thinking, wow, it must be really easy to speak in a language that is your own. And then I thought, hang on, I'm English and I speak English and half the time I can't do conversations. So speaking in a different language, I suppose that must be... So how fluent do you reckon you were in 1991 regarding Russian, so therefore you could have these conversations naturally?
Oh, so that leads us on to another thing, that actually when you learn Russian or any language actually outside of the country, you tend to be taught different things because, of course, language is always developing. Language changes all of the time. And so we arrived in Siberia with some words that actually were words that they didn't use. So there was quite a lot of laughter about that, and trying to work out what the exact words were that we should be using. But I was fluent. I could get around. I could hold conversations. So it wasn't a problem to actually speak with anybody about most things. I may have to at that time have had to explain around things, if I didn't know a particular word, but it worked.
And again, the bit that my eldest, when he was learning Spanish, the Spanish teacher turned around and said, "You will always have an accent, and that's okay. It won't be a Russian accent necessarily that you're speaking in. It'll be a British accent."
I actually can't roll my R's. So, and there were a couple of occasions where I didn't actually have my passport and I was travelling around the country. And so that's absolute no-no. So I was always told that if I was stopped, to basically say that I was a Lithuanian Jew, because apparently my accent was mostly like that.
Okay.
And so I had this cover story about where I came from and all of this sort of thing. I mean, it wouldn't have held up to any scrutiny whatsoever, but just that initial bit would have hopefully explained away some of the issues. But I never had to use my cover story. So
do you get jealous if somebody can go brrr like that then?
Yes, I do, yes. Yeah, yes, but both Johan and my son can do that as well, so,
There you go. Now, so you're living in Siberia, you've been there for a year. You kind of end up in the steel industry, though. That's quite a jump.
Yes. Yes and no, in actual fact. So, like many others, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And I realised quite early on that it was always about just finding that next step. So it didn't matter that I didn't have a 10-year plan about what my life was going to look like. And so when I came out of university, I knew I wanted to use my Russian. That's the only thing I knew. I had no idea what the job was going to be or anything like that. And I actually saw an advertisement in one of the free magazines that they used to hand out at the London Underground stations. And there was a very tiny advert in that, and all it said was Russian speakers wanted and a telephone number. That was it. And I called the telephone number and I went for an interview, got the job, and that's how I started initially in the non-ferrous industry. So we traded lead, zinc, copper, aluminium.
It sounds like the mafia, if I'm honest with you. Here's a tiny little advert, one phone number, off you go.
It's really funny because somebody asked me just a couple of weeks ago, how could you have phoned that number? You know, aren't you brave? And I never thought about that until they asked me 2 weeks ago. And I thought, oh, yeah, actually, probably for I was 21, 22 at the time. Yes, that was actually quite brave, but I never thought of it that way.
I'm going to use a different word for you. Naive. That's probably the word.
As well. Oh, I have quite a few of those stories, yes.
Now, one of the parts when I was speaking to your lovely husband, Johan, is that he was talking about oligarchs. Now, first of all, can you explain what an oligarch is?
So the oligarchs are the super rich. They're the ones that own the really big yachts and all these sort of things. They have a lot of control, always have done. Whether it was in the Soviet Union or Russia, subsequently, they have the power.
And I suppose probably the most famous one in the UK that I certainly think about is Roman Abramovich.
Yes.
Former owner of Chelsea Football Club. He's the one that kind of springs to mind, and that's kind of the only reason I know about oligarchs at all, really, because of him. What was your kind of involvement with oligarchs then?
I worked for a few in the steel industry, and some nicer than others, but always a learning experience, put it that way.
So I'm kind of trying to phrase this in the correct way. Working for them, were they nice people? Were they corrupt people? Was the system corrupt? Was it literally what they said went? How was it?
So the whole... Going to upset lots of people now.
Go for it. Unfortunately,
a lot of the higher echelons in both the Soviet Union and Russia today there's a significant amount of corruption. But one of the oligarchs I worked for, he did actually pay some taxes because he wanted to give back to his countrymen.
Okay.
Now, I won't say whether that was a full amount of tax that should have been paid, but he did actually pay some tax. They were just people. They had their good sides, they had their bad sides. I did learn a lot from them. One taught me about having the silence after you've said something, and he was a master at it. He could sit there for minutes just looking at you, waiting for whoever was going to land themselves in it first. And so you learn these things. So it was an experience, and it was one that I'm very grateful to have had, because I learned a lot about business. They were very astute businessmen. It was quite interesting after I left part of it to see their involvement in Formula One.
In what way?
Of course, how do you how do you get a small fortune in Formula One? You start with a large fortune.
Okay.
And just seeing the frustrations from slightly different perspective, and
So I'm intrigued. I went to see a school recently. We're just currently choosing schools for our daughter. And the headmaster came up with a really good phrase, which I liked. And he said that at our school, no one is more important than anybody else. As the head teacher, I have more responsibilities than everybody else, but I'm no more important than anybody else. And I quite like that principle behind it. You know, I run my own company. I have more responsibilities, but I'm no more important than anybody else. And I love that thought process. Do the oligarchs sign up for that, do you reckon? Or do they think that they are kind of better than everybody else?
I think, I mean, just to explain one thing. So in Moscow, you had a lane in the centre of traffic, and that was for party officials to be driven down, but also lots of the oligarchs drove down that as well, and they could go past all of the traffic. Most of them would have lived in gated communities. So I think the experience that they have leads them to believe that they probably are better than others.
Well, fair enough. It's time for some more music. Children by Robert Miles. Why this one?
So this goes back to the steel industry having to actually negotiate pay rises and really struggling with it because I'd get very apologetic and my voice would go up a couple of octaves, and to have all those horrible butterfly feelings. And I came across NLP, so that's neuro-linguistic programming, and this was a technique that I taught myself initially about how to ground myself, anchor myself, so that I could have those conversations. And Children by Robert Miles was something, when I actually did my training, that music was put to that technique, and it made it so much more powerful for me. So I use it constantly. It's the one technique that I use pretty much every day. I used it before coming on the station today, and all I need to do is listen to a couple of bars of the music in my head, and that's it. I'm ready to go, feeling strong, feeling ready for anything.
Sounds brilliant. Well, we're going to find out lots more about you. Fascinating story so far. If you have any questions for Cornelia, then you can text Bath followed by a message to 80011, or you can email studio@radiobath.com. We're here till midday today. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today. My guest today is Cornelia Raubal, and we're talking all about Siberia. We've talked about Russia. We've talked about lots of different things so far. Just kind of moved on very quickly to NLP. Remind everybody what NLP is, first of all, please, Cornelia.
So NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it is basically the language of the mind.
And how does it help? How do you do it then? She mentioned you kind of did it before we came on air today, so what's the point of it?
So it has a number of techniques. I mean, I could talk about this for the whole programme, so I'm not going to do that. But basically, there are techniques which help to bring out the best of you. And it can make change very, very quickly. So you can be completely anxious about doing something, and using techniques, you can suddenly feel absolutely amazing. There's a bit of setup before you do that, but as I say, in using children with one of the techniques, which is actually called the Circle of Excellence, I can be in that powerful, strong moment instantly.
And just to clarify, Children, the song, not using children.
No.
Just to make sure.
Thank you for clarifying.
That's
yes,
okay.
That would, yes.
Just if you weren't listening beforehand, that would sound very confusing. Until I learnt it myself many years ago. In fact, while you were doing that, I was just pressing my middle finger and my thumb together to create an image that went back into my brain, and it's immediately there. Still, even now, even though it's probably 30 years ago that I did that.
No, exactly.
Yeah, it kind of hardwires the brain, doesn't it?
It does, and it's lovely.
It's grand. Now, going back to being in the steel industry, you've used a phrase that is on your websites and everything, which says, the only woman in the room. Now, I'm guessing back in those sort of times, we try as much these days to have diverse people in boardrooms and that, but back then I'm guessing it wasn't quite the same.
I hate to say that it's not changed much since then either. I'd love to say it has.
It's not changed enough yet, that's for sure.
No. But yes, from the moment where I started, probably from the point of when I started trading, so I traded steel for a time, one of only 2 female traders in the world when I was trading, there were very few women. And so I was frequently just surrounded by men. And
did you feel, it's probably quite a harsh question, but did you feel ignored sometimes because you're a woman?
Yes. I had to change the way that I behaved to make sure that I would stay visible. So, for example, men are very good at saying about the good things that they've done, and women tend not, and I am generalising here, and I completely accept that I am generalising, but women tend not to go and sort of go, hey, I'm great, I've done this. And so I had to make sure that I did a bit of that in my own way, of course, but I had to make sure that I was bringing it to people's attention.
And how was that helping then?
It means that people take notice. It obviously worked because I went from trader up to, chief financial officer, and then chief operating officer, and then chief executive officer. So it obviously worked.
You did something right.
I did.
So what was the size of the company you were the CEO for then?
So size of the company, and we're going to talk about financial size rather than employee size, because actually employee size was quite small, but the financial size, it was $250 million US annual turnover. And,
it's very similar to my own personal company that I run. Ish. Yeah, very similar. Or not, as the case may be. How did you feel responsible for all of that then? How was that responsibility?
So it was a very interesting perspective to take that role and find that I could use my signature to write a cheque for 670 million just in one go. Now, of course, my reaction to that was, this is absolutely not the right way to run a business. And so that changed incredibly quickly. It was one of the first things that I did. But it was never about the money for me. It was about the responsibility to the people that I had working for me. It was always about them. The money, yes, money is important, but for me, the people were far more part of that whole story, and they were the ones I had to look after. And in doing so, of course, you look after the money as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a good business principle, isn't it? If you look after your people, then they'll look after you. And I suppose if I'm thinking about it from a car perspective, a car can be a Fiat Uno that's worth £2,000, or it could be a Ferrari that's worth £2 million. It's still a car. And it's still the same amount of things you have to do to make that car work. It just happens to have more noughts after it. So to some degree, the size of a business almost doesn't really matter that much. Yes, there's more responsibility onto it, but it's still the people that are running that business that is the key part. So was it a scenario when you were CEO of that company, you looked around you and there was still just men around you?
Yes.
Just men?
I mean, I sat in the boardroom quite frequently, and, we could perhaps have people coming in that didn't know me. And, there were a couple of occasions where I'm sat there with my fellow colleagues, and the people visiting would ask me to go and make the coffee.
Because they thought you were the secretary.
Exactly. And I'm very British and passive aggressive, so I would actually turn to the male trader and ask him to go and make the coffee, just because,
Well, absolutely.
That's me.
Now, just before the news, we're going to talk about your lovely husband. Why is he a big part of your story then?
So I actually met him on my very first day in employment. So that number that I phoned, wanting the Russian speakers, well, he was there in the office that day setting up the computers. So he showed me the ropes for how to get to my email and everything. And obviously he didn't live in the UK at that time, so he disappeared off that afternoon, went back to Sweden, and then he was back a few weeks later, and we just started talking. And funnily enough, it was actually a conversation about language and how to use language and the fun things within languages that sometimes just don't make sense to other people.
And he's a fabulous guy. I still have very fond memories of chatting to him, and no doubt I'll chat to him again at some point as well. But kind of like, from a leadership perspective, how's he important to you then?
So there was an incident very early on in my career where I was basically sent in the middle of the office, open plan office, and one of the male traders was shouting at me, swearing, being completely obnoxious to me, and I just wanted to disappear. And when I went home to tell Johan about it, I expected a bit of sympathy. I won't actually repeat the words that he said, because that's not quite right for radio, but he basically made me see that I had a choice. So I could choose to fight the system, or I could move to another job but probably find the same type of person there as well. And so it was that realisation that I could choose what I wanted my story to be. And I obviously chose to stay in the industry, and I chose to work out how to make it work for me whilst still being me.
I think it's really important. I go back to my own, I've been a manager and running the business for a long, long time. I've never gone to any courses. I just kind of look after people. And for me, I'm sure there are better ways in which I could do certain things. Of course there are. But it's always about just making sure that what you try and do is right. And sometimes, I find it very easy running a very small business. There's 80 odd people that work in the business. If we make a decision, let's do that. Whereas when you're in a bigger company, that's much more challenging. Now, just before the news, it's time for your song. I'm going to try and say how this is. Vad du ser är vad du far. That's perfect. Literally perfect. Yeah, perfect.
So, vad du ser är vad du får.
That's what I said.
Yep, absolutely. What it means is what you see is what you get.
Okay, why don't you just say that then?
Because it's in Swedish.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
This was actually our first song at our wedding, because it's a principle that both Johan and I hold true, because we are what we are, and maybe not everybody's going to like us, but we are true to ourselves, and in doing so, I hope that we bring something else to the table.
Brilliant. We're going to be here right until midday today, back after the news.
Jag är inte typen som intrigerar, så du behöver inte vara så reserverad. Nej, ge mig din kropp, ge mig din själ. Falling apart. Nothing I can say, a total eclipse of the heart.
So sad news today that Bonnie Tyler has sadly passed away, so we thought we'd play that song just right there and then. It's Richard Beauvoisin here right until midday today. My guest today is Cornelia Raubal. I've managed, Cornelia, not to say your name in a weird way, so I have one of my favourite guests. He comes on 4 times a year, Mr. Ben Buttigieg. Okay, and because he has an unusual surname, I always say Mr. Ben Buttigieg or something like that. But today I haven't done any rolling of the R's or anything for your name. So far, I have to say the fact that I've said about it for this long tells me that I probably am going to in the next parts, just to pre-warn you, just to let you know.
Fair enough.
Can you remind everybody who you are very quickly?
So I'm Cornelia Raubal, and I work as a leadership coach. I have my own business, and I'm about helping more women to do the same as I've done.
Brilliant. And we've been listening all about your story. Now, part of your story, very unusually, and I'll say it is unusual, is ice hockey. So we're going to chat about ice hockey now. Now, my opinion of ice hockey is the Americans and Canadians going around the ice very quickly and smashing the living daylights out of each other. And that's about it. That's as much as my knowledge of ice hockey is. So how have you got into ice hockey then?
So it actually started quite a number of years ago when our son was about 4 or 5, and we wanted to go on one of these ice rinks at Christmas, one of the open air ones. And it comes back down to my husband, Johan, again, because he actually declared that if he had to skate with those ice skates that you can hire, he would probably end up killing himself. So therefore, he had to get some proper skates. Okay, so very quickly. So my inability to ice skate, and I am, well, to the point now, because of my job, I now actually don't let myself ice skate. Yeah. But I can blame the actual hiring ice skates because they're not good enough. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. I have an excuse at last. At last, have an excuse. Sorry, please carry on. So, in Johan's opinion, the only true ice skates are ice hockey skates. They're the proper skates. Ice dance skates are not. They're built differently, so they're the ones that they tend to hire out. And so, in the course of him finding a place that would sell him some skates, he ended up joining an ice hockey team, just a rec one. And because he used to play in Sweden as a child. And so, of course, it was inevitable that our son was going to want to try it as well at some point. And that happened. And he started ice hockey when he was about 7, I think it was, 6 or 7. And they always need people to manage teams, to coach teams. It's always a problem because it's all worked on volunteers. And so I agreed to help with the managing for the under-9s at the time. And because when I do something, I'm going to do it properly. There's no half-hearted measures. I did the whole training for becoming a manager. And that, as they say, the rest is history. So I have managed club team all the way through my son's ice hockey journey. He still plays ice hockey. He's now joining the under-19s next season. And I've also managed the England juniors, took them to Bratislava, the girls, to Bratislava, and then also the boys in Dumfries. So I've been part of that journey, managing for quite a long time, and I've done training for the managers within the country with a team of people. And I then joined the board of the national governing body for ice hockey in England and Wales. It's quite varied, to say the least. I'm going to go back to managing a children's ice hockey team. Yes. Is it the scenario? So what does that first of all include? Because I'm in my head, if I go back to when I used to play football, in children's teams and stuff, the main thing the managers had to do was make sure that everybody got there on time and almost manage the parents, because the kids were going to do what they were going to do. They're going out on the ice, but it was often the parents that were the issue. I'd say there's nothing different to ice hockey managing either. It is frequently the parents. It's very much, as you said, it's making sure that they arrive at the same time, in the right place at the right time. It is completing the paperwork that needs to be done for when you're running the game. So you run the game, you have to persuade more volunteers to come and help you run the game, because we need people to look at the number of shots we have on goal, and many other things as well. So it's very much an administrative bit, but it's also looking after the well-being of the players. So there's elements. So I'm a trained safeguarding level 2. We have to all be DBS checked. So it is very much around making sure that the players are okay and that they're not struggling with anything. And did you have to choose the teams? Because I'm just thinking, the difficult part of saying, little Johnny, I'm afraid you're not in the team today, and how that went down. No, I get to blame the coach for that one. It's the coach's decision completely about who appears on what team and who's actually playing on the team for like the next weekend. I just have to almost be sort of the person in the middle to sort of avoid parents taking it out on the coaches, but they tend to deal with the coaches for that.
It's always the coach's fault, because obviously everybody at the sidelines, we always know better, because
yes, of course,
you are the full expert. The England football team, we know what they should have done. If I have to say, regarding managerial stuff, and I've studied it for a long, long time myself, the last game that Thomas Tuchel managed, I don't think I've seen a better managerial performance than that regarding the decisions that he made, for the people that he brought on and the way he did it, the time and everything. I thought it was probably the best managerial display I've ever seen when we played Mexico. So just my little bit out there, because quite often we can say to the managers, what are you doing that for? That doesn't make any sense, and get very passionate about it all. So going to the board then of UK ice hockey, is that the correct term, hopefully?
So it's all changed just recently. So I've been on the board of the national governing body for ice hockey in England and Wales. We actually had 3 bodies. So you had the governing body for Scotland, and also you had Ice Hockey UK. We actually got through a merger of those 3 bodies just before Christmas. We got the vote, and on the 30th of June it actually went through. Okay.
And are you still part of the board?
I am no longer part of the board, but I've served my 3 years.
Okay.
So I'm actually quite satisfied with that. But I still get to be on the management committee, just making sure that the interests of the clubs and also the players and all the people connected with it are safeguarded and watched, and just promoting them.
Now, this will mean nothing to you, this next part, but I'm a dance teacher normally, and there's a lot of people that will listen that have been to my dance classes, and you mentioned a word then which I kind of can't let go a little bit of, because quite often what we have in our dance class, we have one move at the beginning, and then we have another move, and then we do something called merge them together. And I do a little merge, and I bring my hands together going up in like a triangular thing, but this is my Professor Brian Cox, look at the stars. So that's my impression, and I always use the merge part. So I know it means nothing to you, but those that are listening that are dancers will absolutely know everything I'm talking about there. So
I used to dance as a child. So
did you? What dancing did you do?
I did ballet, tap, modern, ballroom.
And you don't do it now by the sounds of it?
No, I don't do it now.
I'm going to ask the question, why not?
I ended up doing too much of too many other things, and something had to give. And ballet was my real love. Unfortunately, at 5'9", I am a little too tall to be a ballerina, and so I stepped out. From time to time, I have gone back to sort of tap or to ballroom, but at the moment, I'm not dancing, I have to admit.
Oh, well, you need to try and get back to it. For mental health purposes, it's one of the best things in the world, so do try and get to that. It's time for a bit more music. He says, go into your next link, which is... Now, the last one was, I'm going to say is in the perfect way again. So, vad du ser vad du far. So, again, I've said it perfectly. I'm aware of that. So, you've sent me another one, which is L'amour toujours. Is that any better?
Well, I don't speak French, so
okay,
I think that's close.
I have a French surname, but that's as close as I get to speaking French. So, now I'm hoping that I've got the right edit of this. This is the Tiesto edit that you've asked for. So this is quite different to the last track.
Very different. This is my eclectic music. I love all different types of tracks, but this one's particularly dear to me because this is an ice hockey song as far as I'm concerned, and we took our son to watch ice hockey at the World Championships a number of years ago, and they played this one on repeat. So whenever I hear this, I picture that enormous stadium that we were in, and also our son managing to give high fives to the whole of the Sweden team.
Oh, amazing. We're right here until midday today. It's Richard Beauvoisin chatting to Cornelia Raubal. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today with my guest Cornelia Raubal. There we go, I got the little roll in there for Raubal. I had to say it slightly strangely. We've been talking about ice hockey. We've spoken about Siberia, speaking Russian, being the only woman in the room. We're kind of changing tack now a little bit. We're going to talk about bullying, which is quite a tough subject to chat about. So why have you brought bullying into the conversation then today, Cornelia?
Partly because it's part of my life, and it again taught me something. I always believe in looking at even the negative things and trying to get that learning from it. And at the heart of it, it is who I am. And so, for example, I was bullied at school.
So in what way were you bullied at school then? Because that happens quite a lot. I heard literally very, very recently how a child was walking home from school and they literally got beaten up, trousers taken off, and then those pictures were posted on social media. And these horrific things are still happening. So how were you bullied at school then?
It is horrific, and I'm very glad that social media didn't exist when I was at school, because I dread to think. So a lot of it was more of the name calling, more than anything, but it was also physical as well. It's probably not hard to understand. I had my lovely national health glasses. I'm very short-sighted. I obviously get to wear contact lenses now, but I'm a little different, and that's okay now. But I've had to grow into that. When you're a child, all you want to do is fit in. You don't want to stick out like a sore thumb and be different. As a child, I loved to read. People just said I was shy, but actually I was never shy. I'm just observant. I like watching what goes on around me. I love people watching, and that's not changed. And so that was the start of it. I'm different, so people don't like what's different.
So if you can say, I don't know, obviously make sure their terms are appropriate for the radio. Kind of, what did people say to you? What were people calling you then back in those days?
Oh, a lot of it was just silly things like Four Eyes, and obviously on my name. And I've always been quite protective of my name, actually, because Cornelia is quite an unusual name, particularly in this country. And so I didn't like it when it was like Corny or Cornflakes or all manner of creative ways about my name. I don't think when I was at school that they were quite as creative with the name calling as perhaps they are today. I mean, I've obviously been managing ice hockey teams and being around children, having a son of my own. I've heard some of the names and the things that are said now, and it is far worse. But when you're in the middle of it, whatever it is, it still feels bad.
Absolutely. So that's when you were at school, but that's not the only time you were bullied, was it? No,
I mentioned earlier on the programme about the steel trader, who was a very big bully. He used to like making all of the women cry in the office. It's come through various times in my life. Now, obviously, as I've got older, I've got better at dealing with it. Actually, the last real sort of bullying that I experienced was actually in 2008, when unfortunately the company that I was the CEO of was in liquidation. There's a whole big story around that one, but the receivers that were put into place for that were incredible bullies.
In what way?
Because they were not winding the company up correctly, and I told them, because it was actually a Swiss company, the branch office was in London, and I told them they had to go to Switzerland, because I couldn't give them any information because of all of the rules that they have in Switzerland about companies. I couldn't give them the information that they were seeking. But if they wound us up in Switzerland, then of course they could have all of the records that were in Switzerland. Because they'd only wound up the branch office, I could only give them the information connected to the branch office, and they didn't like that. So actually the last call I had with them they were threatening to send the police.
Right.
And it's quite a number of years later, and I'm still waiting for the police to turn up on my doorstep to have a word with me about not telling them all of the information in Switzerland.
I'm hoping from a psychological perspective here that when the doorbell rings, you don't think, is it the police still?
No.
Have you got past it now?
To be honest, I don't think I ever really worried about it at all, because I knew that the company had been run properly, because at that point I was running it, so I knew what had happened over the last 5 years at least of the company, and so I never really concerned about it. It was just, again, empty threats from a bully.
So bullying has happened to you, so therefore you can understand it. How do you now use this in your everyday life then?
This, I find, is a situation that many of my clients actually do struggle with, particularly in the workplace, particularly when they are in the minority. So that might be the only woman in the room, or few women in the room, but it can be all of the other minority situations that we could perhaps find ourselves in. It can be men also in all-female environments. So I'm not just saying it's only about women. And it can be varied. A lot of it is just names, or saying that you're not capable to do that. And one of my very first clients that I had struggled with this in the workplace, and she was just completely finished with it. I mean, she was at her wit's end. She didn't know what to do, and she was struggling very badly emotionally because of this. And just after working with her, I mean, it was only 4 weeks. We were using NLP and neuro-linguistic programming, and I actually walked past her in the supermarket because she had changed so much. I didn't physically recognise her because she suddenly became very confident in her own capability. She ended up leaving her job and go and find something more suited to her, but that was her choice.
That sounds like you are helping people. So NLP is one way in which you do help people. How else do you help them then?
A lot of it is through my experience. I mean, when people talk to me about what they are struggling with at work, in life, in business, I recognise something of my own experience in that. So it means when they're telling me about how alone they feel, I get that, because I felt alone, and it's because I've had the experience. I can also go beyond the coaching into the more practical ways of actually dealing with it. And sometimes all I am is a sounding board. People just need to get that information out. They need to talk to somebody about it. And then that's all they actually needed, because it then becomes clearer in their mind what they want to do.
Now, I know, because we're not that dissimilar in age, that when I was growing up, the good old phrase of sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me, which realistically couldn't be further from the truth, could it?
No, it couldn't. And, I hate that, because it almost gives permission for people to say whatever it is that they want. And it's so not true, because sometimes the physical bullying heals much faster than the wounds that the name calling can actually make. We can talk about things like microaggressions. That's something that we frequently have in the workplace. And on their own, they don't seem much, but so over time...
What's a microaggression then?
A microaggression is a very small comments. So, for example... Oh, why did you do it like that? Oh, that wasn't very good, was it? And again, on their own, they don't really demand attention. But if you keep hearing somebody saying, oh, you didn't do that right, are you sure that you're capable of doing this? We take it in, it goes in, it makes a wound. And those wounds then become the bit that our mind spots. So it's that bit of, oh, so they're all telling me that I don't belong here. So think about a boardroom. Oh, they've all told me I don't belong on the board. Or perhaps perhaps I shouldn't really be here. Perhaps I'm faking it. Perhaps I'm just pretending that I can do this.
And as the only woman in the room, quite often in the boardroom, for instance, did you find that bullying was more prevalent there rather than elsewhere?
I think by the time I got to the boardroom, I had more ways of dealing with it. And I was better at shutting those things down. But it's those things, people don't really think about what they're saying. And so it's something that you can come across anywhere.
I know for me, so when I do one-to-one lessons, I'm not saying I'm bullying people, by the way, let's get that out there very quickly, but I'm always very direct with people, and I say to people, I'm going to be very direct with you because time goes by really quickly. Yeah. I'd hate to think it ever came across in a bullying perspective, though, so maybe some people aren't aware of it. So just final question on this is just a bit of advice for people that you think might be the bullies but might not know it necessarily, so traits that they would recognise. And then as you are being bullied, kind of a good bit of advice to cope with it.
Well, one of the things, coping with the bullying, I mean, we've taught our son, actually, that when those things are said, it's often just saying, oh, I'm sorry, what was that you said? Because then you're actually forcing the bully to repeat it again. And suddenly it becomes less interesting or become deaf. And I think you have to choose when not to hear things as opposed to actually dealing with it. But there is a place for not being able to hear things suddenly. And for bullies, I have nothing against people speaking directly to me. If it's done with respect, then I would rather know if I've done something wrong and have that conversation. It's generally the approach. If somebody is speaking in a way where they're trying to score one over somebody, then I would call that bullying. If it's a situation that you've just described in your dance studio, then I'm going to you to help me to be better. So I get that there's a time constraint. I don't want to be having to pay for hours and hours and hours of your time just to get one little thing right. I'd much rather you say to me directly, you're not doing this right, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. So I think it comes down to respect. I think that's the ultimate bit.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly, in my dance studio, I'm there to help people. That's why I run my business. And that's purely all it ever is. It's time for a bit more music. You've chosen Free.
Yeah. Yes.
Not a surprise, really. By Rudimental. Why this track?
Freedom's a big thing for me, in actual fact. This is rather overarching for the whole of my life. I've always wanted to know that I have the ability to choose my path and to take those steps that I wanted to take to end up where I am today, and also to help others find their freedom as well, because my freedom will look different to somebody else's.
Beautiful. We're going to be back with the last part with the lovely Cornelia right after this. It's Richard Beauvoisin here until midday today. Last part now with the lovely Cornelia Raubal. We've been talking all about Russia, Siberia, ice hockey, bullying. We've done loads and loads today. Last part is all about your business and kind of what comes next, really. So what is the business that you've built then, and how does it run?
So the business is built around what I experienced when I was a woman in the steel industry. So I work a lot with women in similar situations, so women in male-dominated industries, specifically STEM. I do work with men. People always worry when I say that I work with women, but I work with men as well. It's about that bit about getting more confidence, about realising that people have the power within them already, and it's about just letting that power come out. And so it's a real mixture, depending on what's needed, between coaching, mentoring, a bit of consulting, sounding board. It's whatever my client actually needs me to be, and then I can offer them that.
So for those that don't know, what is STEM?
Science, technology, engineering and mathematics. Sorry,
that's all right.
Completely blank on that one.
Made
just
me
because I'm
think
on
as
radio.
well. That's all right. Made me think as well. So you're basically helping people generally in high-powered positions, I'm guessing.
No, not all. It's through every step of their journey, really. So it is that point, perhaps from leadership, middle management. I do separate it out because leadership and management isn't, for me, necessarily the same thing. I get so many people say to me, but I'm not a leader, so therefore you don't want to work with me. But we all deal with different things. We all have people that we're responsible to. We have to organise things. So I would actually suggest that many of us are leaders. Not all of us, but many of us are, that even don't think that they are.
In what way? So, I inevitably lead my company. I also manage my company as well.
Yes.
But in what ways are some people not leaders then?
There are some people that choose not to be. They don't want to be. For them, it's just that easy bit of working, going home. And that's what they want. My father was very much like that. My father drove an articulated lorry, and then he worked for London Transport. And for him, that was what he wanted. He didn't want to have to be answerable to people that were working around him. He wanted to be responsible for his part of the job, and that was it. So again, it comes back down to that: we choose it.
I suppose it's putting the square peg in the square hole, isn't it? Because if you put somebody that's not a natural leader as such into a leadership role, then not only do they fail probably, but the people that they're trying to lead won't have the best example ever. So
exactly.
What happens to yourself if somebody's coming along and saying, I need to be a leader because it's my company or something like that, but I don't have those skills? How can you help them in that regards?
Skills are always easy to build. I mean, you know this as a dance teacher. If you have somebody that is coachable and wants to grow, then all of the skills, techniques and things around that can be given over and can be learned. So and it's very much the same with what I do as well. A lot of the people I work with actually have not just the internal sort of lack of confidence, imposter syndrome type thing, but it's also, I need to do a 5-year plan. I've never done one of these. What do I do? Because having to do that brings about anxiety, so therefore it feeds into the internal lack of confidence or lack of or feeling like an imposter, that I can deal with both of those together.
So imposter syndrome is a big thing for a lot of people. And yes. I still think, like, when I started doing charity auctioneering, I ended up doing a charity auctioneering gig at the Bath Guild Hall. And I'm standing up there in front of 200 people, all dressed in dicky bows and lovely dresses. And I'm there going, how did I get here? And it felt very, very strange. And I've presented for 30 plus years, and I was like, how have I still got here? I did the job and it went very well, thankfully. But imposter syndrome, when you're a leader, is quite a difficult thing to do. So from a leadership perspective, what would be the good skills that you really need to have that you could teach them, for instance?
So there are techniques. We talked about it earlier, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP techniques that can help ground you in that moment, so you can build confidence by practicing those techniques. It's also that realization that we have that within us already. We might not trust ourselves, but it's about learning to trust ourselves and being human. I think, for leaders, that's what we need from them. We need them to be human, and we have this picture of what a leader looks like.
Okay, so what does a leader look like then? In your head, what is that picture that everybody has in their head then?
Too many leaders, or in people's heads, think of, those usually male, people that love to shout, to basically force people to do things that they don't necessarily. We think of the Trumps and.
I mean,
immediately
in my head, which I think is quite a natural thing for a lot of people, would be Winston Churchill, for instance, from World War II. A natural leader.
Yep.
After World War II, the bit that most people don't realise, he failed miserably.
Yeah.
But nobody really remembers that bit. They just remember, we'll fight them on the beaches and all of that type of stuff, because that's what he was famous for as a leader.
But I don't think he was a particularly comfortable person to be around. He would have demanded certain behaviours, certain actions needed from the people around him. I think there's a middle ground. Again, we can do a whole radio show about this, but we all have within us, if you look at behavioural styles, we don't always tend to be one or the other. So I know, for example, that in my steel industry days, I was much more direct, much more forthcoming and more directive, because in certain situations, when we had vessel sink, that's what I needed to be. My usual state is actually quite nurturing, quite collaborative, discussions, empathy, those sort of things. And that's where I live normally, if you like. But for example, when a young hockey player got a slash across his wrist by an ice skate and it was bleeding profusely, I immediately went into that bit of telling all the parents to get out the way and to make sure that he had medical attention and all that sort of thing. And we're all like that. And it's about understanding the people that we have around us. So, if you're going to be directive all the time, that's not going to work.
So it's changing the hats depending on the situation,
absolutely.
I suppose. I'm thinking back to, and again, I'd love your thoughts on this. So I was running this meeting last night with all of our front door people, and somebody asked me a question, and I genuinely thought it was quite confusing, the answer that I was going to give. And I said to them, do you know what? I don't know the answer. Now, from a leadership perspective, is that a good thing or a bad thing to go, I've no idea?
I think it's a good thing. It shows that we're human. I mean, we can't expect to know everything. We can perhaps know where to go and look, and obviously now with technology it's much easier to know where to go and look for an answer on something. But that's also why we want to have many different people around us that are not necessarily exactly the same as us. I mean, unfortunately, what we have with promotion and people getting jobs is we promote what looks like us. But that means that we have a very narrow view of the world. What we need is actually to widen that. So we have different people. On boards, you need to have somebody that will actually argue against pretty much anything and everything. Because by doing that, that's where you find the best answers and you make the best decisions.
And I suppose it gets very difficult because the higher up you go, the more difficult it is for people to argue with you, I suppose. If you are a CEO of a company, who's giving you advice? Because everybody theoretically is beneath you. So who's the person that's challenging you? So when you've been the CEO, if you kind of have people around you that you almost surround yourself with people that don't agree with you?
Yes, absolutely. I was always the one that didn't agree with other people when I was climbing that ladder. Again, always respectfully, but if I disagreed with them, I would tell them and we'd have that discussion. And so, yes, I love it when people say to me, well, I don't think that's right. Sometimes I'll think about things and think, well, actually, for me, that's the way I want to do it. But sometimes it will actually lead me to perhaps even a completely different answer that hasn't been brought up. And that's the best decision that you could possibly make.
And from a leadership perspective, people often complain, let's look at politicians, for instance, doing U-turns. Actually, a U-turn is where they've gone down a philosophy and gone, actually, we've now listened to everybody, it's not the right way. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying you should be U-turning all the time, but just to go down a route and go, it wasn't actually the right thing to do, there's a better idea, is a good thing to do. What's your thoughts?
I agree with you. And sometimes we can get stuck in one position because we don't want to make the wrong decision. And my experience tells me that sometimes making a decision is better than not making any decision. And sometimes that means that you go along the wrong path and then you have to do a U-turn. But I think staying still is the worst possible thing, because then you can't grow. Then you can't grow your business. You can't grow yourself.
So we've got about a minute left. Okay, so what kind of is next for Cornelia then?
Well, I have been challenged to write a book about my experiences in Soviet Union and Russia. So that's about halfway through. So that will be coming soon.
I know that feeling. It'll be
how
out
quickly I can actually write that. Yes, I know.
At some point.
And there's lots of things that I'm creating now. So I'm creating retreats because I realise that that's just such a brilliant way to bring about transformation. And so that I'm going to be doing that. And it's about helping more people so that we can actually see the figures changing for investment in female business and also for boards as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on today. I've loved the chat. There's been not enough time. I'm definitely going to get yourself back on, and your Han at some point as well. Last track. I love this track. I Love My Life by Robbie Williams. Why this one?
So I have to tell you a little bit of a story about this one, because actually this came about last year. I'm a speaker as well, and we all as a family went to an event held by my speaker coach, and as part of that there was the recognition of growth. What do we want to leave behind? What do we want to take forward into the future with us? And we had to do a sort of an assault course type thing, and there was a zip line at the end. Now, for me, I hate anything like that. I love roller coasters, but I hate zip lines.
Yeah.
They just scare me. And so for me, that was actually a big thing to actually go down a zip line. And as I was stood there trying to, using my NLP techniques to ground me and to anchor me, they had the music playing, and I could hear Robbie Williams' I Love My Life playing. And at that point, I realised just how amazing my life has been and how amazing it's going to be from here as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. Loved it. I'm going to get you back on at some point in the future. I'm back next week between 10 and 12. It's all about cricket next week. Can't wait for that. Cornelia, here is your song. See you again next week.
And God knows I've made a few. I started to question the angels, and the answer they gave was you. I cannot promise there won't be sadness. I wish I could take it from you, but you'll find the courage to face the madness and see it.
Richard. Every week, Gerald. Every week.
Well, as I said to you before, and I'll say it again, I'm trying to set the emergency tape off.
We start this podcast the same every single week. Podcast, there we go. That's how much I'm thinking about the podcast, you see. This is available on the podcast. Absolute garbage. Absolute nonsense. Just two blokes rabbiting on for now 17 minutes, it seems. Absolutely
Well,
nothing.
I saved you some good time this morning.
Have you? How long have we got today, Gerald?
Well, we started with 8 minutes and 2 seconds.
Now, you've disappointed me.
Why?
Last week, you promised me 10 minutes.
I'm going to go for that next week.
No, you said that last week, I don't believe you now.
I am going to go I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do it.
You know the bosses are in today and they're listening to this.
I know. That's why I'm behaving myself.
We are the only things on air right now. That's quite scary. Now, I'm going to talk to you very briefly about... He's now thinking about drinking tea, but realise the bosses are listening. I'm going to talk to you about guinea pig gate.
I told you before, being a breakfast host, it's a lot of time, and you don't get time to drink tea. This is only my third cup this morning.
You're aware that songs are on and they last about 3 minutes normally?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you could drink tea then.
Yeah, I know.
Just to let you know. Now, I'm going to talk about guinea pig gate. This is a big thing in our household this week. So when I saw you last week, guinea pigs weren't part of our lives. And then, all of a sudden, guinea pigs are everything. Are we getting guinea pigs? Can we have guinea pigs? Who's going to look after the guinea pigs if we go away? It's guinea pig this, guinea pig that. We got guinea pigs yesterday. The hutches have been built, or as I'm going to call it, the lodge has been built. 2-story lodge for these damn guinea pigs. I'll be honest with you, I'm getting more phone calls about guinea pigs. The guinea pigs are being looked after better than I am. They've got fans, they've got umbrellas shielding them. Dear mercy, guinea pigs.
You could do a television series of it, couldn't you?
What about guinea pigs?
Yeah, Night Watch.
Night Watch. Do you know, I almost suggested this, and then I've stopped myself so far. I'm praying that my lovely wife Zoe doesn't listen to this. I almost thought about, you can get the wireless Bluetooth cameras, so you could actually watch the guinea pigs whenever you want. But I know that if we did that, she'd just be constantly in the living room, well, not watching TV, but watching the guinea pigs. So
I mean, are you enjoying watching the guinea pig?
I am feeling rejected, Gerald. That's what I'm feeling right now.
So you thought you'll come to your show, you'll talk to me, and then you feel wanted again. Is that what you thought?
I know you want me, Gerald. It sounds so wrong by the second.
I think your guest is just arrived.
My guest, lovely. Via Zoom this is. So
I don't think she's waving at me.
Oh, lovely. That's all good. Yes. Just if you are listening, Cornelia, this is Gerald, you can see, not myself.
He's a better looking one.
I'm not commenting on that one, but that's coming up on my show between 10 and 12 today. So how are you, Gerald? How has your week been?
I'm not bad, thank you. My week's been normal.
Yeah?
Yeah. Normal, busy. Yeah, it's been busy.
Now, we still haven't sorted out our night out, have we?
No, but
every week goes by.
We will. We will. I can promise you we will.
We will, absolutely. I really need to. So you normally have something planned for me, don't you? To, I guess the James Bond theme.
No, last week was a good one. You didn't get it last week.
No, I didn't get it last week.
You did get it as such, I remember, yeah.
But you've done absolutely nothing this week, haven't you?
No, because I was busy at work and stuff like that, and
you need to be prepped, Gerald. Come on, this is the key part.
When we get 10 minutes next week,
right,
then we've got plenty of time.
Okay.
Plenty of time.
All right.
To do stuff.
Okay.
We could play yes and no game. We could play dangle the carrot. We could play...
Okay, hang on. What the monkeys is dangle the carrot? Because that just sounds like a very unusual game. How is that working on radio? First of all, explain what it is, and then how does it work on radio?
I don't know. I just said it. I don't know what it is.
So there isn't actually a game called Dangle the Carrot?
No.
Right, because that just sounds wrong. You can't have a cup of tea while we're talking just to escape the fact that you've now said something which you can't get out of.
But the problem is that we need to divide the game here, right? It's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Yeah.
You could make me the millionaire and that'd be the game. It'd be fine. We could go after that.
So hang on. So I just give you £1 million. Is that what the game is?
Oh, yeah.
Right, that's quite a short game. And I'd also like to say I don't have £1 million to give to you.
Oh, there's me thinking you did.
No, I've actually got a bone to pick with you. I've got it here in front of me, and I'll show you and here's the piece of paper just to prove that it is actually a real piece of paper. And this is the Richard and Gerald Radio Show Idea Bank. Okay, but I saw the other day that you'd already done like a 60s and 70s radio show. Did I see that?
I was covering for Ian.
I saw you've done one of our shows, John.
No. I was prepping for it.
You were prepping for it. Okay, so how did your 60s and 70s radio show go?
It was actually all right.
Was it?
Yeah. We played every bit of 60s, every bit of 70s.
The whole lot, every song ever created.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but it was good.
Okay.
It was good.
So how was it different to your normal breakfast show when obviously you're very busy doing the traffic and all of the other important parts? How was it a different show for you, Gerald?
It was more relaxing.
Okay.
You don't have to do the travel.
Yeah.
Because it's 6 o'clock at night. All you have to do is the weather, and then you play some great music.
Right.
That's it, yeah.
And you just did you speak about Katie Price on that show as well?
No.
Have you spoken about Katie Price today?
No, I've avoided today because...
she's actually on the news today as well.
Well, I'm not being funny. If you look at the showbiz gossip, she is plastered all over the place. All because she's got this Netflix documentary that's going to make her more money to go to Turkey to go to have a facelift.
Right. Is that what she does in Turkey?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I can't really say what she does in Turkey, but I said facelift to be on the safe side and not to lose my job.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough.
That's why I said facelift.
No, that's fine. That really is fine.
Your guest is laughing.
Is she? Does that mean hopefully she can hear what we're saying then? Because, hello, Cornelia. This is 10 minutes of absolute rubbish we talk about
the
here.
nod of the head
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
That's a good sign she can hear us. That's always very, very rewarding, if I'm honest with you. So what have you got coming up over the next week then, Gerald? Because you love being in here. We love you being in here, Gerald, as well. But
what shows do you mean?
Well, just in your life. What is coming up that you're looking forward to in the next week? I thought I'd throw you that question.
I got work, really. That's it.
Work and being in here. The reason I ask that is at the beginning of every dance class, I always get everybody to ask each other what good things have happened to you in the last week.
I tell you what's good things happened to me. I look forward to a Thursday and talking to you.
Do you?
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I look forward to this part too.
I do.
I really do.
If there's one thing that's going through my mind on a Wednesday, is you.
Oh. Now, if I'm honest with you, Gerald, I think you need to get more of a life. If that is the highlight to your week, our 10 minutes of absolute rubbish now.
I mean, this lady's enjoying it.
Yeah.
I can see she's going to download this. It's going to be a winner.
It will be available on the podcast, which I'll be doing with Cornelia after my show. So this gets put on there every single week. If you want to listen back to all the previous rubbish that me and Gerald have spoken about over the last umpteen times, then you can just go to any podcast. Just fast forward all the normal guests; they're boring. But you want to go to the Richard and Gerald part.
And the thing, she sees I can drink tea on air and talk.
It is impressive. You are impressive. Now, very quickly, because I've missed it this week so far, I still want to hear the jingle that you're going to do for us. So this is the Richard and Gerald show type thing. But what are you going? How's it going to go?
1 second.
Oh, go on. Have you actually got to do something? Have you?
Yeah. 1 second. There we go.
How am I meant to hear the lyrics of this?
Richard and Gerald. No. Rubbish.
No. Coming up on my show today, be quiet, Gerald, is Cornelia Raubal. It's on a story to tell. Loads of stuff right from very beginning in Russia, or Soviet Union as it was back then, to right now. We'll be on between 10 and 12. I've just crashed the lyrics, Gerald. I don't care today. I really don't. Anyway, see you next week.